Nathan, I've got an update from Danny Faulkner on why he thinks that I'm wrong with the gas pressure point. Do you want to screen share?
Yeah, sure.
So I've shown him the video where we demonstrate what happens when you put gas pressure next to a vacuum and you open the valve. In other words, remove the barrier. And we all know it immediately bursts into the vacuum and pop goes the model was the video on my channel. But listen to what he said in response. He said, but there is no container between Earth's surface at 120,000 feet above us. Therefore, if what you are claiming about the air around us is true, then the air at ground ought to be sucked up into the vacuum at 120,000 feet. The fact that it doesn't ought to tell you that there is something very wrong with what you are claiming.
Stop.
Now I'm like,
hold on. That's circular reasoning. That's pointing at the sky and saying, because I believe the sky is a vacuum, and it's not dispersing into my fundamentalist religious belief in a sky vacuum, well, then there's something very wrong with what you're claiming. No.
Yeah.
His first statement is our claim. Again, it's somebody else that's decided to reassert our own statement back to us like that's some sort of defence. Yeah, that's correct. We wouldn't have any gas pressure, Danny Faulkner. If the sky was a vacuum, correct. All of the gas we're breathing here at ground level would fuck off into the sky vacuum, as you correctly assert. The fact that you believe it's a sky vacuum isn't a defence. That's circular reasoning. For the love of God.
It's also denying the consequence as well, because like I've said to him here, I said exactly. He gets it, right? He gets it. He says, therefore, if what I'm claiming about the air around us is true, then the air on the ground ought to be sucked up to the vacuum at 220,000 feet. I said, exactly. But that doesn't happen real world, does it? Let's be clear. This is not my claim. This is how gas pressure is caused. And vacuums don't technically suck, but I take your point and I agree with you. I totally agree with you. It conflicts 100% with reality, doesn't it? So well done. Why doesn't this happen real world? So he's flipped it around on me.
There isn't a fucking vacuum at 100. Where's this vacuum at 120,000 feet that he's talking about? There's lower pressure, but there's no vacuum been confirmed at 120,000 feet. So it's a straw man in itself in the next.
Well, he basically realizes that because it doesn't happen real world, he thinks that there's something wrong with my claim. But what he doesn't consider is the possibility that he might have it wrong. Let me just try and address this bit here. He said, how many times must we point this out to you before you begin to understand? This is why I choose not to engage with you, because you fail to see this very obvious problem with what you are claiming. You discomprehend much of the world around you until you realize that I can't help you and it's fruitless to engage in a discussion with you. And I said, discomprehend is not a word. I believe that the word you're looking for is miscomprehend. Tell me, why is it not your model that's wrong? I demonstrate what happens real world and define the cause to be the container and define the cause to be a container. But you translate that into me being wrong rather than your model. Please explain how the definition and the demonstration is wrong, but your model is right. Because it's the definition of gas pressure requires containment for it to have it in the first place. And we can demonstrate gas pressure next to a vacuum, literally one bursts into the other. But for some reason, he doesn't compute that. And he thinks that my model's wrong because real world, it's contained. And it's like, dude, you've just demonstrated that you realize that this can't happen real world. You debunk your own model by doing that.
No. Hold on. Just 1 second. Just 1 second, Paul. No. Go scroll back up to his first statement. He's using circular reasoning. Because he believes the sky is a vacuum, it means that it couldn't possibly disperse into it, and your assertion is incorrect. Because the sky is a vacuum in his fundy belief. Textbook circular reasoning.
Tony, the second paragraph when he says, how many times must we point this out to you before you begin to understand? How many times have we heard that?
Hold on, Paul. Go ahead, Ranty. Just finish off your statement, then go ahead, Paul.
Just how many times did they say this to us that we don't understand?
We do understand. But what he's not realizing is...
Okay, hold on, Jock. Hold on, Anthony. Just go ahead, Paul.
Well, the Globers always do this. They do a bait and switch on you. They consider differential pressure a vacuum. But that's the bait and switch they do on us. When we say vacuum, I mean there's no substance up there. But when they say it, they mean there's a differential pressure. That's why when you talk to Zanuck, you talk to anybody, like a wing on an airplane, above the wing is a vacuum, below the wing is higher pressure. Even though there's the same amount of substance above the wing and below the wing. Do you understand? So they do a bait and switch on it. They need to define vacuum, and they need to define differential pressure.
But when they do that, to have that differential, you must first have gas pressure. And without the container, there can be no pressure. So his assertion is essentially circular reasoning because he believes the sky is a vacuum. So, bait and switch? No, it doesn't address the question. The question is, how can you have gas pressure without a container?
And it's crazy because he says the fact that it doesn't fill the vacuum is why Anthony is wrong.
Perfect.
Yeah. Are you kidding, bro?
Hold on. Go ahead, Chocolate. Go ahead. Hold on, Paul. Go ahead, Chocolate. Say that again.
No, he points. Anthony, scroll up real quick. How he points out, the fact that it isn't ought to tell you that there's something very wrong with what you are claiming. Precisely. Not his model, with Anthony's claim.
So because he believes the sky is a vacuum, the fact that it isn't filling the vacuum clearly means your claim is wrong. No, simply because it's not filling the vacuum means there isn't a vacuum. But you believe there's one, therefore there must be something awry here. No, just your fundamentalist belief that defies a law of nature. Ergo, the sky is not a vacuum. Not the sky is a vacuum, but there's something very wrong with the law of nature because the bloody gas isn't filling it, you moron. That's your circular reasoning. This guy is a complete clown. The fact that it isn't. What, the fact that it isn't filling a vacuum as it absolutely should? It would fill the available volume. The gas would fill the space. Yeah, that's precisely what it would do. Right, I'm just going to shout out a few...
Sorry, I addressed that when I've quoted him literally saying that the fact that it isn't ought to tell you that there is something very wrong with what you are claiming. No, I have demonstrated that my claim is spot on. That is what happens. It's the other way around, Danny. Because this doesn't happen in real life means that your model is wrong.
But you just don't understand.
And the way he points it out when he says the fact that it isn't, right? That means that he understands that it would if it was a vacuum.
Correct.
He just needs to prove.
Chocolate's got it spot on.
Exactly, Chocolate has got it spot on, and that's precisely why he needs to demonstrate what he is assuming. The fact that it isn't, the fact that the gas isn't filling the available volume, Dr. Daniel Faulkner. Well, no, you'd need to demonstrate that could happen. In other words, you'd need to demonstrate that you could have gas pressure without a container, rather than saying that your fundamentalist religious sky vacuum belief hasn't got gas dispersing into it, simply because you believe the sky is a vacuum. Textbook circular reasoning. You would need to demonstrate that gas would not fill the available volume, as you assert happens with your fundamentalist sky vacuum belief.
I honestly don't know how ballers can not see this. They've got to be turning a Nelson's eye.
I'm saying, look, the difference in pressure is kind of irrelevant because the key detail is the volume. So when you say something like 120,000 feet, or the Kármán line, or any other arbitrarily designated position in height, numbering 120,000 in this example, it's meaningless. Because the thing that actually dictates any of these pressures would be the volume the gas can occupy.
Yeah.
So this 120,000 feet is meaningless. What's the volume? That's how you calculate it.
It's 3.58 times 10 to the 80th cubic meters.
Ah, okay. There's a vast amount of space, and the gas is going to want to fill that space. That's the end. The volume is the key detail. Arwin summarised it beautifully at the beginning of his time here.
Just want to say that what
and
Adam
Danny
was
Faulkner's
referencing.
response is an absolute joke. Unbelievable. You circular reasoning knucklehead from the Black Lagoon. I can't believe you actually wrote that. Do you actually read the stuff that comes out of your mouth or before you type it? Right? Before you hit reply or send, you need to take stock in what comes out of that incoherent pie hole, Danny. I'm embarrassed for you, clown.
Yeah, point at the sky and say it's a vacuum. Therefore, it's a vacuum. That's his logic. Absolutely embarrassing. Circular reasoning. They all do it.
It would wreck his worldview. That's why he can't understand it.
Could I say something there on Danny Faulkner's response to
Go
Anthony?
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
My take on that is that Danny Faulkner knows exactly what he's doing. Danny Faulkner knows he messed up the other day when he posted that reply with Blue Marble Science's video in it. He knows he messed up, and now what he's trying to do is create a nonsense argument that he can infer gravity into. So when he's asked on a radio interview, because he knows this is this topic is what's the word, controversial. So if he ends up being asked at some point, but how come you couldn't answer this question if someone happens to come at him with this on a call on a radio station or something, or if he's asked publicly, he wants to be able to switch that argument around and be able to infer gravity. But he actually is trying to go a completely 360 against a 360 against the very video that he showed or he used as a defense the other day. He's literally trying to wash that away. That's what it seems like to me, because he needs to sell books.
Yeah, Paul was right when he said it was bait and switch. That is what he did.